Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are happy to present today's webinar on data-driven preventative maintenance with dataPARC. We'll go into how to utilize ParkView tools to help track preventative maintenance at your site. Let's get started. A little housekeeping to kick us off. We're using GoToWebinar. You should be able to listen through your computer or by dialing in. If you're having difficulties or have any questions about the content throughout the webinar, please type in your questions into the question field. If you have questions after the webinar, feel free to email us at dp-info@dataparc.com. We'll answer any questions we have at the end, and we'll be sure to reply to your emails about the webinar as well. All right, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Molly Colwell. I am a chemical engineer and have been working for dataPARC for about 5 years now, and I have a background in pulp and paper and quality. Wayne, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Wayne McAdams, a chemical engineer. Been worked in industry for about 20 years before I switched over to working for dataPARC. Been with them for 15 years as an engineer, but was a customer for 10 years before that. Alrighty, let's go over the agenda a little bit. We're going to be talking about preventative maintenance and building a preventative maintenance schedule, some dataPARC use cases, and a client use case, which Molly will be presenting on a cleaning schedule, and then we'll give you an opportunity for questions and answers. We do have somebody monitoring the chat, so if you do have a question, just go ahead and type it into the chat, and we'll queue those up for the end. Thank you. All right, preventative maintenance. What is preventative maintenance? Scheduled maintenance based on historical or manufacturer suggestion. What are we trying to do? We're trying to keep machines and parts maintained, and if there's a schedule, we will get to it. It's a very straightforward methodology, and our goal is to reduce chances of equipment failure and downtime, and especially unscheduled downtime. So when we started this presentation, I started to think, what do I do in my real life in preventative maintenance? And I thought my pickup truck lubrication schedule. And this is right off the invoice that they presented to me. And as you see, it has all the pieces of a preventative maintenance cycle. What am I working on? I'm working on my F-150 pickup truck. What schedule am I working it on? Well, on a pickup truck, you usually use a mileage-based schedule to when you're going to do lubrication work on the truck. Who's working on the truck? What technicians and personnel did the work for me? And a checklist of things. Some things they just checked, some things they, of course, changed the oil, changed the filter, but a checklist that documents and preserves the work done on the piece of equipment. So building a preventative maintenance schedule. So what needs regular preventative maintenance? How do you decide that? Well, manufacturer recommendations, that's always a good place to start. Process history and institutional knowledge. Get your operators involved. They probably have a better feel for what equipment needs to have done to it to stay healthy than a lot of folk do. So what needs regular preventative maintenance? Again, manufacturer's recommendations, process history, institutional knowledge. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. Sorry about that. When does it need PM? Manufacturer's recommendations, current and historical data are ways you can figure out when it does need preventative maintenance. Who will be performing the preventative maintenance? Operators, supervisors, maintenance personnel. Just whoever's responsibility the particular maintenance task falls under. And what types of PM? Obviously, inspection. You need to go by and look at the equipment occasionally. Cleaning, clean equipment is happy equipment, and oil and lubrication. Slippery equipment is happy equipment. How will the PMs be tracked? Your preventative maintenance, you can track it with alarming. You can use alarming, for example, in a runtime situation, hours run. Reports, where you can produce written reports to have supervisory personnel review to make sure everything's getting done. Data logging, writing down what you did, and also dashboards. You can use dashboards to visually present what kind of work you've done. All right, so this is a use case of a manual data entry form. We can track what maintenance has been completed, cleaning, and inspections. We can create a time-based schedule, once per shift, once per day, once per week, whatever you need for the kind of maintenance round you're putting together. And we can also create event-based schedules, which can work on hours of operation or some other metric you need to use for when a piece of equipment needs to be looked at. You could configure alarms and email alerts. You can alarm if your manual data entry system, if we haven't entered the properly scheduled maintenance rounds, we can send out alerts on that, reminders to help folks get their backlog taken care of. We can use warning variables. We can use vibration, temperature, hours of operation, just anything you have hooked up to a data system that is then available in dataPARC. If we can express a metric for giving us a warning, we can build something that will give you that warning. Automated reporting. Obviously, everybody's busy, and the easier you can put information in front of somebody, the better. So you can schedule reports, manual data entry, and process data. Reports can highlight areas that have not received safety audits. You can do calibration reports for lab testing and instrumentation, so you can keep track of that kind of stuff. And reports can be sent via trigger. You can send a report triggered by downtime. You can trigger it by action, oil and lubrication reports filled out, that kind of stuff. So you can get these reports in front of the people that need to take a look at them without them having to do work to get to it. It's just there for them when they need it. Status graphic dashboard. We have graphics available in dataPARC, and if this is the way folks like to look at things, we set up maintenance status on machines. We can concatenate all the variables around a preventative maintenance cycle into a machine and maintenance status indicator, timestamps of last completed date, buttons linking to. We can put buttons on it that link to data entry systems and reports. This shows, this just shows a simple green star means everything's caught up on that piece of equipment. The red symbol means there's something that isn't right with your preventative maintenance activities on that machine, and then you could have blank for just everything's maybe not done yet, but not past due yet. So existing maintenance management systems, obviously a lot of facilities might have some sort of corporate or local based maintenance management system. We can interface that with dataPARC using SQL tag templates, customized data downloads or reportings. And what this could do is just move the data into our visualization tools. If you can find, if there's advantage to you in that, we can get the data into our visualization tools, our alarming displays, reporting, and dashboards, so that your operators can have operators and supervision can have a one-stop shop for how they look at what's going on in this kind of maintenance activity. Okay, client use cases.
All right. This is where I'll take over, Wayne. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so we had a customer who had a cleaning maintenance schedule that they were using in Excel, and this was becoming very problematic for them. With the version they had, they weren't able to have multiple users edit the Excel document at once, and they had all of their different areas and all the different tasks for those areas in this one sheet. So that really caused issues with saving the sheet multiple times and having different versions of the same report. The other problem was that they weren't getting notifications when something was past due. No emails or anything sent to them, and they didn't know what was upcoming. There was maybe a little bit of conditional formatting in the Excel sheet. However, it wasn't, sent in an email. You'd have to open the report and know what you were looking for. So our solution was to replicate this schedule in ParkView using some of our tools. And I do want to mention we used version 5 for this. And that will come up a little later because with 7, we have some new features that we would do a little differently to solve this solution now. So some of the tools we used our data entry tool, MDE, to record when the cleaning was being completed. So instead of being in Excel, now it's an MDE, and now those values are backed up to the database, so you're going to have them in the future. We also used PARC Report and PARC Task Workflow Designer to create a report and then send it on a schedule. And then finally, we did use some custom, we did create a custom scheduling tool with Excel and VBA, but we'll get into that, and that's one of the pieces that now with 7, we wouldn't have to do. So let's jump into a quick demo. We'll go ahead and start with the MDE. All right, oh, there we go. So as I said, the MDE is where we're simply recording values. So when someone is ready to, or they've completed a cleaning of a certain area, they can expand these sections for their different areas and then add a new record and simply check off what they have completed. We also have, so all of these are just check boxes, and then we also have some drop downs, some simple drop downs to say if that area was actually cleaned or inspected, and then save the data. So that's it there. Then we have the report itself. So generate a report. This is what was being emailed out, and very simple report. We just have a couple sections. The first one is past due. So it tells us it's sorted by date first. So whatever is the most late is at the top, and then by area. So if we had multiple within this Delta Former section, we would see all those tasks. So then we have the task and the date it was last completed. Then we have what's completed, what is due in the next 30 days to kind of give them a heads up. And further down in the report, we have 60 and 90 days. So it kind of shows everyone what is coming up and what they need to prepare for. And this is emailed out on a weekly basis. There's not too much configuration in the workflow designer, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that once we get into the configuration portion. And lastly, here we have the Excel sheet that we made, which is our configuration tool. So this was just created as a user interface so that we could schedule the frequency in days. So we have a very simple drop down here. If we just wanted to look at a certain area, we could just grab everything from one area. And then we can edit the frequency. So if it went from 14 days to maybe 30, we can just edit it and save the configuration. So a very easy way to maybe add more tasks or edit your frequency of your task with this user interface. Okay, now let's go ahead and dive into how all of this was created. So first, with the MDE, this was used to track when the cleaning was completed only. The tags that were created are mostly checkboxes with some drop downs, and the records are created manually. So we'll go ahead and look at that MDE configuration. So in configure, a couple points I want to highlight here. The data provider is going to be manual, so we're not on a time schedule, but preventative maintenance is a great one to do for a time schedule if you want to do daily or shift, like Wayne had mentioned earlier, or if you want to use those action action MDEs, then the query-based one is where we're going to get those actions coming through. Then we want to make sure we're allowing users to add new rows. So in this case, we want that add new rows button. If you're doing time scheduled or action based, you wouldn't need that enabled. Jumping over to the display columns, we have two things here. So on the far middle right here, far right, we have the checkboxes. So most of these are just checked off. And that's going to give us our little checkbox, which is either going to be a 0 or a 1 in the database. And then for a few of these, we actually have a drop-down to either clean or inspect. So that's what we call a lookup. And in our lookup edit, we can just type in our display for inspect or clean. And the other feature in here that we have are the groupings. So with the groups, it lets us, group together tags so it's easier to find what you need exactly. So to create these, you highlight a certain section of tags and right-click and add group. I'm already within a group, so I need to do this outside of a group, but I can go ahead and edit this certain one. And then you just type in the name, choose your background color if you want one. They can all be the same or just white. And you can also adjust the font if you need that. So groups are something you want to do at the very end. You know, if you do the import and export of the tags, the groups are in the Excel sheet. So make sure you save your grouping until the very end. And however you format these will be how the MDE opens. So I had it with the first one open and the rest of them closed. All right, next we'll go pop over to the Excel sheet. So again, this is what we use to schedule our configuration. We had to build a table in SQL for those frequency values because we wanted to store these constants. And there is a stored procedure that updates the table, and we'll look at the code real quick in Excel. We used an Excel sheet because it's very user-friendly, so someone who's not familiar with SQL to just edit it in the database would be able to use this spreadsheet. Now in 7, we actually have Asset Manager that can store these constants for us. And this would be a really good use case to use Asset Manager instead of creating this custom solution. So we just walked through a little bit of the configuration of this. We wanted to make it very simple. We have our active tags, so you could deactivate something but not delete it, so you can always get it back later. We have our areas, which correlate to the areas, the groups in the MDE. The task name, so this was specifically for the report, so that we could pull all that information together. So that's also stored in SQL. The MDE tag to help us correlate when something is due and when the next due date is. And then finally, our frequency in days. So even though this was a custom solution, I just want to show the code real quick because it actually didn't take a lot of code to create this solution. So we're basically just saving the data to the database and then pulling it back out so we can view it. So this is a very short and simple code that was created for this project. So just a couple of macros in here, and I think that's, yeah, all we need to show. So not too much with this one, just wanted to explain user interface was the main purpose of creating this. All right, so now it's time for the PARC report. So we know that we wanted to display or show what needed to be cleaned and what was coming up next. So in order to do that, we needed to know what we wanted to see, how we wanted to see it, and then we had to do some scripting and formatting in order to get it in that way. So go ahead and open our PARC report designer. So this is where we actually build the report that we will be able to send later using our workflow. So first, just want to touch base on our data source. So this is where we are pulling the data out of SQL and connecting those frequencies and due dates. So the MDE data when the last one was due with the Excel data when the frequency needs to happen, and we calculate our current status, which is it overdue, and when does it need to be due next. So we are calculating those in the report itself here. And then from that, we have a couple data fields. So we're able to get the tag name itself, the status, the next due date, and the task name. And we're putting all that information in here. Now we're also adding some sorting and grouping. So within our sorting and grouping, we're grouping by, it says sort, but it's really the status. So is it overdue? Is it due in the next 30 days? Is it due in the next 90 days? And then, so that's the grouping section, group by. And then these ones is how we're sorting it. So within that group of status, we want to sort by the due date. We want the most overdue items up front. And then we want to sort by the area. And finally, alphabetically by the tag. Some other items we threw in here, just the date. So in our equations, we can do now and it will pull up the current date for us. In the information area down here, we added some simple scripts. So this is just adding a text in front of our actual value that's dynamic. So we're adding the word due date, :space in front of our dynamic value of due date. And we put those together so that they kind of stay together instead of having them separately. The spacing could be off. Now, this way, you're always going to be in line and in the same spacing. So we did the same thing with the task and the last completed time. So we can go ahead and preview this again. And we can see our task and then those dynamic values coming in that are not in those double quotes. And with that report, the client wanted something very simple, but you could pull in other information, and maybe with those cleaning and inspection, there are 2 different frequencies or things like that. So we just had a very simple report, can always become more complex, or really you just need to know what you want to see and how you want to see it. And then lastly here we have the PARC task workflow. So this is where we're going to schedule the report. So we need to know how often the updates need to be sent and who needs to be informed about it. Now, one of the things with our updated version is we actually have triggers. We can trigger workflows from alarms. So originally, we didn't use alarms because what exactly would we alarm? Would we create an alarm for every single task in that we had? That seems like a lot of alarms. Or if we created one alarm for all the tasks and something was overdue and we set an alarm, then how would we know which task specifically was overdue? Now with the feature in alarm configuration, where we can schedule a workflow off of an alarm, we can actually schedule that report that we just looked at and have that overdue portion send out if something becomes overdue. So now we can kind of remove the weekly report that might, someone might not open it because it's coming every week or coming too frequently, and replace it with this workflow or alarm report so that it is only being sent when something is actually overdue. Or we could use both of them. So you still have what's coming up, and then you have the alerts for when something becomes overdue. Okay, PARC task. So here we have our reoccurring execution. Just wanted to send it at 7 a.m. So when supervisors, right before their morning meeting, they can look at the report Monday through Friday and see what tasks are overdue so they can discuss it in their morning meeting. So we just need to send it once a week. So that is our trigger. And then for the steps of this, very basic, like all of our other reports, which we have this example on the forum. But first we need to save the report. So we have the configuration for where the report is and where we want to save the report once it's saved. And then we send the report. So here we can type in the subject or code the subject. In this case, we did the file name and time. And then the body of the email, if you have links to the display or links to other displays or more text, you can always add that in here. And then finally, the email addresses. So this one we're using as a parameter, and over here we can find all the emails that we're sending it to. And then once we send the email, we decided we wanted to delete the report. So we added this file operations function, and then it deletes the report so that we're not getting, we're not holding on to a ton of reports, because you can just run it independently if you'd like. So kind of to wrap all this up for specifically the cleaning schedule use case, we took the Excel version that was just saving values in Excel to MDE, and now we're saving and tracking what needs to be cleaned in MDE. And then we created the PARC report and PARC task to actually do the calculation of when it's next due and to send an automated report and notify of upcoming items. And then we used our Excel and SQL to store the configuration and scheduling information for this use case. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any in the hopper, Molly.
Yeah, I don't either. Give people a minute. Just while we're waiting, I guess I can just walk through a little bit more of the potential solution for the alarm configuration. So in the new PARC task workflow option, you'll get a drop down of any workflows that you have saved and enabled to view in PARC View. And you can select those. Oh, that's not a good example. And then you can tie information, either specific values or alarm information, to and pass that through to the workflow. So that is kind of how this is working. And then you also have your trigger execution and everything like that. But your email addresses will now be in the workflow for this one in particular. But you don't have to send just emails. These can be any type of workflow. Okay, so it looks okay. So I'm not seeing any questions. So I think we can wrap it up. So thank you for joining. If you have any further questions, please email us at dp-info@dataparc.com, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks.